Here we are in part 2 of our exercise to animate those gears. We used keyframes to begin with, and then we decided to use an expression so that the gears would be animated automatically. And the expression is time multiplied by 100. So that was in the last exercise, and I copied this to also the second and the third gear. Now let's see what I can do with these gears. What I want to do, because they're black on black, so we can't see them, if I switch off my transparency grid, you will see that you can't see them anymore. So either to see them simply as a shape, I could add to these shapes a layer style. So in layer style, and outer glow. If I do this to one of the gears and I remove the transparency grid, you now see the shape of my grid as a very fine line. What I can also do to see my gears a little bit better is maybe to set a background so I can create a new solid, and I can choose a color that's maybe like a dark blue like this one, and simply say OK, and take this color and bring it down to the bottom of all my layers. And so now I have a layer that shows me where my gears are. But more than that, I want to create texture inside those shapes and give them a sort of painted metal, rusted style. And this is one of them. So I'm going to take this texture and import it onto one of the gears. My first gear is on the bottom, layer 3. I'm going to solo it. This is my solo button here, by the way. And I can see that this is the left one. So I'm going to import a texture onto the top of, I'm simply dragging it and dropping it on top of my gear, making sure that I can resize it so it covers entirely my gear. And I'm going to take this texture that I just placed here, select it and drop it down in the bottom of my layer 3. So it's layer 4 now. The reason is I want it behind, so when I do the track mats, it will appear inside my gear shape. So now I'm going to find where are my track mats. And the track mats are hidden here. You have here toggle switch modes. So that means it's a toggle switch that goes from switches to modes. Here are my switches. What I want now is my modes. So I'll simply click on this switch modes, and now I have my modes and I have my track mats. Select the track mat, which is at none right now, no track mats, and put it to an alpha mat of the gear that's just above it. When I select this, you can see now that my texture is now exactly the shape of my gear. And the last thing I have to do, because you can see here my gears rotating, but my texture is staying at its exact place. I would like my texture to follow the movement of the gear so it looks like it's painted on the gear. So what I will do, I will use my parents. So aside from the name of the layer and the modes and the track mats, besides it is the parent. And I'm going to parent my texture to the gear. I will simply take the rope here and bring it to my gear layer, or drop down the menu and choose my layer 3, which is the one just above. Either way, now my texture is following the exact motion of my gear. So what I'm going to do now is do the same to gear number 2, which is in the middle. So I'm going to choose another texture and drop it on top, and the same thing applies. So this time, just in the middle like this, and I will shape it to be just about the shape of my gear. I will bring it under my layer 2. It's now layer 3. I'm going to choose my track alpha again, So now the texture is combined, and I'm going to parent this, again, the texture, to the gear above. And now I have a double texture moving with the gear. Let me do the same with the last gear, which is layer 1. And I will take yet another texture that I will bring on top, resize just by pulling the sides, drop it down underneath the gear. Now it's underneath, as you can see. Take my track matte to alpha, and again take my parent of the texture and bring it to my gear that's on top, which is layer 1. Now I have a triple texture and gear moving. So in order to see this a little bit better, I will add a few filters to this. But before I do that, I want to pre-compose these so they are in one layer only, so I can apply filters to both layers at the same time. So I'm going to select layer 1 and 2. So shift select layer 1 and 2. Go to layer, pre-compose. I will move attributes to the new composition and say OK. The next one is the gear in the middle, and I'll choose the gear and its associated texture, and again go to layer, pre-compose. Now I have single layers with everything combined. So if I play it, you will see it's exactly the same thing. Now I just squished everything into one layer. It's not lost. If I double click any of those pre-compositions, it will open them again and I can make some changes. Here again, I will select both layers of my last gear, go to layer, pre-compose, and go to, now I have 3 layers in my background. So the last thing I'll do here to distinguish everything a little bit better is go to my effects presets that are here. If you don't see them, the effects presets are in your window effects presets. So if they're not selected, you can select them and they will open here on the right. This is my search field for all filters that I need, and I'm going to search for a drop shadow filter. So drop S, and here's my drop shadow filter, and I will simply apply it to gear 1, which is right here, my third one, and I will place my opacity maybe to 60%. I will make the distance a little bit bigger. As you can see, I'm sort of creating some three-dimensionality to this gear here, and a little softness won't hurt. So maybe 12 pixels, 8 pixels distance, and there we go. So I will copy this shadow, drop shadow, and I will simply select both gear 2 and 3 and say Command V, which means that I pasted this effect on all gears at the same time. I will do the same, looking for another effect. I will do a bevel, which is a shape, a 3D shape. And it's a bevel alpha that I will drop onto the first gear again. And I just dropped it onto the layer. And now I will take this bevel and I will increase the bevel. As you can see, the gear number 3 is shaping up into something interesting, and I can choose where the bevel is creating its highlights and its shadows. And I'm creating a 3-dimensional shape to my gear. And again, I can take this alpha